Hello, everybody. Hello. It's time to start. Thank you all for coming for this exceptionally well-attended legislative breakfast. There's some overflow seating to the side here. I'd like to thank Fred's Energy and Dennis Percy for promoting this event very greatly, and they're sponsoring this lovely breakfast. And Pasumsik Bank, yes, thank you. And I wanted to apologize for the last legislative breakfast. My communication with the Eastside, it was my fault that they didn't have a better breakfast. It was on me, so I apologize on that. But make up for it today and eat everything very well. I'd like to thank NEK-TV for coming, and I'd also like to thank the Eastside for sponsoring this. And I'd also, our scheduled speakers are going to be Russ, Ingalls, Mark Higley, and Leanne Harple. And I'd like to give the floor to Dennis Percy from Fred's Energy to just say a word or two and thank him again for sponsoring. Thank you.
It's great to see such a turnout here. I think we all are interested in what happens to this state. We're very proud as a plumbing and heating company here to support our legislators. I've been to Montpelier a few times. I listened to what's going on. There's some good stuff going on there, but there's still some work to do. I hope all of you have a voice, and don't be afraid to speak out to your legislators, to let them know how you feel. You know, there's stuff coming down the pike that's going to hit us right in the pocket. So support your legislators and be heard. That's what we need to do. They're down there in Montpelier speaking for all of us. We need to direct them, and they'll listen. Thank you all for coming, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first speaker we have today will be Senator Russ Ingalls. He's been serving since 2019 for the Essex District. He's the chair of the Senate Committee on Agriculture, and he's on the Senate Committee on Institutions. Thank you.
Wow, nice crowd. As I always say every time I get up here, it's always nice to see everyone, because without you being here, then why are we even here? So to hear your guys to come out and see that you're interested and that you have plenty to say, because we have a lot to listen to. I also want to thank the Chamber. I want to thank NEK-TV. I want to thank all of you for coming. I also want to thank Fred's Energy. Dennis is very understated what he's done and what his company's done. You know, there's a lot of things going on with energy down there, and I can say that most of it's not helpful to Vermont in any way. Dennis shows, and his team shows, Fred's Energy shows, and they could just go through life and just charge you more and just keep on showing up and filling your tanks and doing everything and charging whatever the charge needs to be. But they're not in that way. They understand the harm that's being caused by some of these policies, and they're down there swinging and fighting and showing up and talking and speaking and listening and putting petitions together and doing everything that a local company would be doing or should be doing to help their community. So thank you, Fred's Energy. Thank you, Dennis Percy. Thank all of you for showing, for coming, and everything that you do. I'd really want to, with this many people, want to leave enough time for questions. So I'm just going to kind of buzz through some things that that I'm involved with. As it was said, I'm chair of Senate Agriculture. Agriculture in the state of Vermont is a $4.2 billion industry. It's actually taken over tourism as the #1 driver of monies in the state. So we are an agriculture state. We're a tourism state, but we are an agriculture state above all things. So we have 23 different classifications of farmers, which is very, very nice. And I think the thing that really impresses me as I go around the state and I go to these farm groups is it's not your father's Cadillac anymore. It is a bunch of young farmers getting in there. And I can remember what really opened my eyes to that. I was down at Addison about 7 Friday nights ago, and it was 8:30 at night. I was still there, 2.5-hour ride home. But I was listening to a group of young farmers, and I really just thought at first it was going to be, oh yeah, well I got a goat on my parents' farm, and then I got a few chickens, and I've got, no. These people are under the age of 30, and they're rocking it. They have an aversion to debt, and they're getting their hands in the soil, and they're actually are what's driving the agriculture business in the state of Vermont. And I just want to touch on how important agriculture is. Never mind the money, but you want to talk about tourism. Well, people come here because of something, usually of what a farmer's done. You go on any back road in the state of Vermont, and I've said this before, you go on any back road in the state of Vermont and you go around the corner and you look, and it's the most beautiful view that you've ever seen in your life. And that's usually because it's a hayed field or a field of corn or a sugar maples or a tractor or cows or barns or what have you. And it's the most beautiful view you ever saw until you go around the corner and then you see that next view. Go to places where agriculture are no longer. Go into northern New Hampshire, go into some parts of northern New York, drive down the road. You don't see anything else. The trees are growing up, the brush is growing up. Farmers, they don't let that happen. The fields are cleared and everything's tip-top shape and it looks great. So thank a farmer for everything they've done. As I said, just a few things that I'm doing. I've got a miscellaneous ag bill. It sounds pretty innocuous, and it is. Except there was some water quality stuff that we had to take care of. I just don't want to get too deep into that because it really doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people. But on miscellaneous ag bill, we took care of some water quality stuff to make sure that we're not putting dirty water into our waterways from farms. We're taking over the permitting process as far as to make sure that we know exactly what these farmers are doing. They know what the expectations of them are. And there was some miscommunication between the EPA and our ANR, Agency of Natural Resources. We've got that sorted out. I put a bill in. We've got it all squared away, and looks like Vermont won't be getting sued by anyone anytime soon, like they have been in the past. We did with all the flooding that's gone on in the state of Vermont and the uncertain climate. We did a farm security bill, which basically is going to add $7.5 million to a pot of monies for farmers that are affected by any of the weather mishaps. And we had some monies in one bill called the BGAP program. It was really for businesses, but farmers were allowed to participate. $2.8 million went to farmers. It helped 84 farms. We looked at that. There was probably another 200 or 300 farmers that weren't, that was no money left for them. So we started this fund. It's a bill in S60, and it appropriates $7.5 million as a need, as if there is a agriculture disaster like we've been seeing in the past. We've had early frost that affected apple growers, grape growers, and of course we know what the last two July floods have done in 2023 and 24. So we've passed that out, and that looks like that's going to make it around the corner. We've also done a right to farm bill. What's a right to farm bill? We've been trying to pass this for 10 years. And it really is to keep farmers from getting sued from being nuisances by their neighbors. The way the law says right now is if somebody has a problem with a farmer, they can just go and they can file a lawsuit, and it's up to the farmer to say, no, it's not me. I'm doing everything, and they have to prove their innocence. Well, this language in this bill actually makes it the proof of the person filing the suit. We've had a lot of people move into the state, which we need them to move into the state. They move next to a farm. And they spread manure a few different times of the year, and then all of a sudden they're getting sued because they're causing smells or loud tractors or whatever you have. And we put a bill in, and that is going to keep farmers from being sued by nuisance lawsuits. It's been an ongoing thing, especially on the other side of the state. And it seems like it would be pretty simple to do, but the trial lawyers suing have really held this up, really stymied it. They had a couple senators for the last 10 years, and they wouldn't let this bill pass. We're gonna get passed out. I want to just jump to what I do in institutions. We probably passed out the worst bill ever in the state of Vermont, and I'm going to say it because it's like this. It's called the Kids Code Bill, and we need something. And what it's meant to do, it's meant to protect kids from the internet. We need that. We really do. Unfortunately, this wasn't the bill to do this. This was a bill written by trial lawyers from California. California has the same exact language, and it's just been tied up in court over there and tied up in court, and it does nothing to protect kids. I urged and I pleaded and I begged. I said, let's just scrap this bill and let's put a bill in. Let's write a bill for that. Let's write a bill from Vermonters. Let's get Vermonters in the room. Let's get Meta in the room. Let's get everybody in the room, and let's write a bill to really truly protect kids off the internet for the harms that is caused. It's really, really needed. Unfortunately, this bill, well, the governor's going to veto it. He already says he's going to veto it. Says it just harms, it doesn't do what it's intended to do. But we still need that doesn't solve the fact that we still have a lot of harm on the internet with these kids, and I hope this will be the catalyst that we can move forward and put a real bill in there that will protect kids. What this bill does basically is actually the companies the size of Fred's Energy or most of our companies in the Northeast Kingdom, for no reason whatsoever, somebody can file suit against them. They don't have the means to defend it, and so their insurance company demands that they settle even the first day, even before it hardly gets to court, and then the insurance company settles it for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it never has done anything as what it's supposed to do. So hopefully this will be the catalyst to get a real kids code bill in there and protect kids from getting harmed from the internet. We are going to pass another internet security bill, right to protect your own privacy from the internet. That bill started out a little bit bad, but we took another bill, we put it together, and that process worked. We actually took a bad bill, kind of got rid of that, took the better bill, put it in place of it, and that is a bill in S93, and that should pass with overwhelming bipartisan support, should get a governor's signature, and it will help protect your data on the internet. And if you do not want to be harassed, there'll be mechanisms in there so you can more than opt out. They will be in trouble if they persist and keep on bothering you. The last little bit, I'm going to leave it to probably Mark Higley. We have been fighting with the help of a lot of people to repeal the harmful parts of some of the climate initiatives that have been going on, the clean energy standard, and all of that. It was supposed to, as we all know, we've talked about it about every meeting that we had. It looks like we've put together some language in there to repeal the clean energy standard. Yet there's a lot more things that can happen, but we're in the right way with that. And it doesn't mean that we're any less focused on the environment in any way, shape, or form, but it just means that there's going to be some sensibility about how we're going to get there. We couldn't have done it without a lot of from a lot of our constituents. You voted last year. You had the biggest flip in the nation as far as to have us address this. It's been your voice that's gotten it done, and the thanks really goes to all of you. But other than that, thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Senator Ingalls. And next up will be Representative Mark Higley. He's been serving since 2009. He's on the House Committee on Ways and Means and the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dan, and quite a crowd here today. I appreciate it. I guess maybe I'll start out, and Representative Harple and I have been sitting in on some dual meetings. I'm on Ways and Means, she's on Education. We've also had Senate Finance sitting in on some of our meetings as well. So I'll just touch base a little bit on the funding piece of the school foundation formula proposal by the governor. We've still got a long ways to go on it. We initially have to first find out the number of districts. As you may be aware, the governor proposed 5 districts. The Senate came up with a map of 9. I think in Education Committee, and again, Leanne can talk about this, but there's some proposals around 15, 21, We and Ways and Means have to find that out first. But I just thought it would be interesting for you folks to know that based on the December 1st projections of school budgets, there was a 5.9% increase across the board that was possibly going to be considered. To let you know where some of this money comes from, I can say that the homestead education property tax brings in $766 million. The property tax credit, that's what you get back as a credit, so that's a negative figure of $153 million. The non-homestead brings in $905 million. Sales and use tax brings in $619 million. Again, there's purchase and use tax, some of that, a third of that goes to that, that's $52 million. $75 million, a quarter of the rooms and meals tax goes to that. Lottery is $36 million, $9 million of Medicaid transfer. And again, there's other one-time general fund money. That's where the governor put in $77 million to level fund, in a sense, the overall budgets in the state, so that we wouldn't see that 5.9% across the board increase. The total of the spending in education is right around $2.3 billion. So again, that just gives you an idea of where some of the money comes from. And there's a lot of those figures in there that Ways and Means plays around with. But again, we won't know. This year, it's going to be pretty much standard. Again, when we go into the foundation formula, that's another proposal in regards to the way we do it now. The towns all put their budgets together, send them to the state. State has a statewide grand list, and then they have to come up with this money that I just read off, all where the sources all come from. On a foundation formula, it starts out with a base rate. So it's a base rate per pupil, which covers maintenance in the schools and a whole variety of things based on a per pupil spending. And then you add to it English learners, IEPs, tech centers, any of the increases for your area, and that's what you get, a per pupil cost. That's what's going to be sent to each district, and then the schools are going to pay for their funding out of that. I guess I'll leave that there for now. There is one other concerning piece to me. Again, being new on Ways and Means, they talked about this last year. You may have heard about it, but the state is looking to take over the reappraisals. They want to do it every 6 years, which is fine with me, but the piece that I'm concerned with, and we still haven't gotten the bugs worked out if you ask me, is Property Valuation and Review wants to have 12 district advisors. They initially called them assessing officers. Now they're called district advisors. We haven't got a fiscal note as to how much that's going to cost, but again, that's going to keep your listers. I'm a 30-year lister. I'm responsible for the grand list. There's some real concern here that has to be worked out with who's going to be responsible for your town's grand list. Again, they're looking at 12 districts. And again, we need to get a fiscal note on what that actually costs. And there's a whole lot of concern for me and others, Vermont Listers and Assessors Association, but they want to roll this into this education foundation formula proposal, and it's kind of a concern for me. I guess I'll talk for a minute about some of the initiatives. Russ had talked about the clean heat standard. I'm not that familiar. It looks like it moved a little bit, the repeal of it in the Senate. My understanding is there's still a provision in there for fuel dealers to have to register. It hasn't gone to the floor of the Senate yet, as far as my understanding is. I know that we had quite a rally down there a week ago or so in regards to some of the rollbacks of some of the climate initiatives. I've got a bill in to repeal the following California's clean car standards. That's where there will be no new internal combustion engines sold in the state of Vermont by 2035. The 2026 model years, the dealers have to have 35% of them on their lots, and it's not happening. Talked to a dealer down in Brattleboro area. Of course, they're on the Mass and New Hampshire line. Most of their sales are 50% of the sales are out of state. They can't even get that number of electric vehicles currently. And of course, I think on the federal level, there's a lot going on. We got to wait around and see. The president, of course, rolled back a number of EPA guidelines. I've got to find out. I've got a request in from the Transportation Committee to keep their eyes open for whether or not the president has repealed the following California's clean car standards, which is a waiver from the Clean Air Act. There's 17 other states. Vermont happens to be one of them that follows all these guidelines. It also involves large trucks as well. There's a certain percentage of trucks that dealers have to sell. They're a lot more expensive, in the neighborhood of $425,000 compared to $180,000+. They have a 10,000-pound battery. It needs to be replaced every 200,000 miles. They don't do the job. So it's a real concern for the trucking industry too. One thing I did find out from the Transportation Committee was there was $1.4 million in EV car registration tax. But the problem is it didn't go towards the transportation fund. It went into increased charging stations. So again, there's a concern there. The Agency of Natural Resources, actually under this clean car standard following California, was supposed to come up with a funding mechanism to replace what electric vehicles don't pay in the gas tax to help out our transportation fund. A couple of things that I've been working on. You may remember that the Vermont passed, it was a Biden initiative, one of his first executive orders. It's from the UN. It's to protect 30% of the U.S.'s land by 2030, lands and waters actually, 50% by 2050. Vermont took that on. We passed the 30 by 30 and 50 by 50. It did not include current use land. So I put in a bill, H70, got the Farm Bureau, Forest Products Association, the Loggers Group, Professional Loggers Group, actually the Rural Caucus on board, sent a letter to the Speaker to have that bill. It went to Environment, which is sitting on the wall, to have it go to Ag and Forestry because that's the committee of jurisdiction. Haven't heard word one. It's been 2.5 weeks now. Responded again to the Speaker and asked, what's up with that? Real concern for me that if we don't include this 2.57 billion acres that's currently in current use in this 30 by 30 and 50 by 50, they're going to be looking for other land to tie up. And the governor vetoed the Act 250 bill last year because of a section in it that is Tier 3, which is going to look at ecological sensitive areas for non-development throughout Vermont. There's another bill in environment right now that concerns me that's looking at wildlands. Going to do a study on what constitute wildlands and how we can protect those. If we protect all this land to the point that you can't use it, that people, as Governor Douglas said back in the day, working lands. Well, you have to have people working in the lands to consider it working lands. So again, I think we're going too far in that category, and we need to step back a little bit, just like we do with the Global Warming Solutions Act. The Climate Council for the past 2 years has said we're not going to meet our emissions goals. And of course, we're being sued currently by the Conservation Law Foundation, and there's no reason we can't step back and go to goals, not mandates. Legislative Council told me that, goals are aspirational. It'd be much harder to sue based on goals than it would these benchmarks. So again, there's things, and this is some of the stuff that the governor is requesting too, to step back from some of these benchmarks, go to goals, some of these timelines, different things, because going forward, things are going to get serious here, folks, and who knows what's going to happen on the federal level. There's certainly a lot more going on, but I'll stop there and hopefully have some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Higley. And our final speaker today is Representative Leanne Harple, and she's on the House Committee on Education. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. It's really, as Senator Ingalls said, so wonderful to see so many people engaged with the work that we're doing. So yes, I have been serving on the House Education Committee. It's been a wonderful and interesting committee to serve on. I have been a teacher here in the Northeast Kingdom in public school for 12 years. I did another 3 years in an independent school, East Berks School, and so that background has really prepared me for a tough conversation that we're having now in the education department about the public funding versus the private institutions and choice schools. That's something I've received a lot of emails about. That is in response to the governor's education proposal that Representative Higley brought up. The proposal does call for 5 districts. I think I can say fairly confidently at this point that we will not be going with 5 districts. Almost everybody on our committee is agreeing that that is a little bit too wide in scope, big districts, for what is right for Vermont education. That would involve a lot of kids potentially traveling really long ways, and one of the other parts that concerns me a lot is that it would reduce our school boards to 5 school boards. In that proposal, it says that those school boards would be staffed, if you will, based on the population density within those districts, which really concerns me, especially being from one of our most rural areas. I see it as having the potential to really disenfranchise our rural areas from having any say in our local education policies. And so I think that having somewhat more districts and more of an opportunity for local voice on those more than 5 school boards is going to be really important. The advisory committees that were sort of suggested as a replacement for those school boards are really not going to give any authority to local people. And so hopefully we're going to go with a number. I'm guessing it's going to be between 7 and 15. A lot of talk is coming up about centralizing it around our tech centers, which I think actually might make a lot of sense because that has educational goals and career development goals within that restructuring. It really worries me to just throw out a number and say that this would be good without really knowing what our goals are and what that purpose is. So we have sent a couple of different scenarios to the Ways and Means Committee to ask them to come up with the numbers for what would be the base funding, as in the funding formula that Representative Higley described to you, and we're hopefully going to get those back that week, this upcoming week, so that we can compare those numbers and start to move forward on a number of districts, which is an important step in doing the other work. One of the other parts of the bill that we're talking a lot about is small class size mandate, or rather large class size mandates, but getting rid of some of the smallest classes. Right now, we do spend more per pupil than any other state. I kind of see that 2 ways. On the other hand, you could replace the word spend with invest, right? We invest more per pupil than any other state. But at the same time, we have heard loud and clear, and I agree with this as a parent and a taxpayer, that we need to lower those costs. The number that some people have suggested to us is minimum class sizes of 25 students. I can tell you as a teacher that to me sounds really unmanageable, especially in schools that have large populations of students who have experienced adverse childhood effects, trauma experiences. To have a class with that many kids who really have a hard time being in school is going to be kind of unmanageable, and it is going to cost the quality of our education. So how can we choose a number that is going to maintain a good education for Vermont students? Someone else threw out the number 10. I mean, maybe that is a little low, so we're looking at those numbers too and figuring out whether we want to mandate a minimum class size or a minimum teacher to student ratio. So both of those are under discussion in this upcoming week. Getting back to the issue of tuitioning versus public versus private, that's another tough conversation in the Northeast Kingdom because we have a long history of sending our kids to private institutions that have served as our public schools. I think that a rumor kind of came out in the last couple weeks that any education plan we passed would make it so kids could no longer attend St. J. or Lynn Institute. I'm not sure if anyone in this room received that letter that was put out. I want to clarify that that is not on the table. That was a sentence from a bill that we're not considering that was submitted to us in February. Any plan moving forward is going to have the students that went to Lynn Institute or St. J. Academy probably, I mean, I can't say 100% until the bill is passed, but this is what I think, that they will go to those institutions. One of the other pieces, though, was that it would require a minimum school size for other private institutions that our tuitioning towns currently send their kids to, for instance, like Riverside. Which really worries a lot of people because we have some really good independent schools that are the right schools for some kids in those towns that have no elementary schools. So we're looking at ways, maybe you can ask Senator Ingalls about this, but it's more in the House right now, in the Senate right now than the House. We're looking at ways that maybe we can keep some of those private institutions in those particular towns still open. So what would be some scenarios there? It is important, I think, though, that we not completely open up a voucher system to send all of our public school money to private institutions. That's a really tough thing. It creates kind of two different institutions, those for the kids that have transportation and whose parents know how to shop for schools, and those for the kids who are left behind. So we have to be really careful moving forward and looking at those unintended consequences. I'm hoping that within all this consolidation, that we will be able to keep our small elementary schools open. Vermont is Vermont. It'll always be small. It'll always have small institutions, and that's a beautiful thing about our community schools. There is a public school town hall that is taking place on March 27th at Hazen Union from 5:30 to 7, and I'm hoping to talk with more people about that issue. But I think generally in the education committee, we do want to see our small schools survive this. I'm hoping that the consolidation will really mostly affect our upper administration, maybe reduce some positions that are redundant across 119 school districts, and with less school districts we could save there. We could also combine some of our resources. It is true that we have some high schools that are so small that they lack some really important features of a good education. Science labs, auditoriums, we have buildings that are out of date, and we have students that I think want to be with more students. I teach in a really small school. I've had classes of 5 or 6 students frequently, and that's not what they're looking for in a high school education. I think that combining those resources at the high school level could be worth talking about, and we could offer something new. But I also think that it's really dangerous to impose those ideas on towns without getting their input. Nobody likes that. We need buy-in. We need communities to be excited about the institutions that they offer and what are the possibilities if we do close schools, that those could still be centerpieces of town. So we're having those conversations as well. We did send out a survey. Unfortunately, it closed on Friday, but hopefully some people in the room filled it out to try and get as many perspectives as we could about the future of education in Vermont. So that is, I'm sure you have many questions and I'm happy to answer them, but that is basically the gist of what we're talking about in the big ed bill. A lot of what I've heard is, you know, through the town meetings is that what people really were asking for was for us to change our funding mechanisms, not the way that we deliver education. And I'm trying to repeat that as often as I can in the education committee, you know, that too much change is not exactly what people wanted. They wanted the lower cost. So how can we sort of achieve that without dismantling the whole system? Hopefully we will find a way. In other bills, I mean, that's mostly what I've been working on. That has been taking up almost all of my time. But another bill that I put forward is about giving towns the autonomy to decide whether or not they want wake boats on their small lakes. I don't necessarily think that that's going to go anywhere this year, but I do think that it is opening up a conversation for more wake boat education so that hopefully we can come up with a wake boat bill that will make it so that those smaller lakes can be protected. Yeah, that's kind of everything that I've been working on. And so are we taking questions after? Like, okay.
So now we're going to open up the floor to questions. As always, the sponsor gets the opportunity for the first question. All the following people who would like to ask questions can line up over there. When you come to ask a question, please state your name and the town that you're from. You're allowed 1 or 2 sentences to lay the groundwork, and then please address your question and address it to either Senator Ingalls, Rep. Higley, or Rep. Harple, or all 3 of them, and just let them know so who you're addressing. So thank you. So Dennis Percy is available for the first question. He's gonna pass. Okay. Well, here we go.
Janine Young, Craftsbury. I'm very interested in the education bill. Over the years, I've volunteered in classrooms and been around schools, school board, and school committees. Education closest to the student is the best.
Please get to the question.
Oh, okay. So I want to know, how can we make sure that the small schools are kept? Because that's where you have the best education. And I think I'd start with Representative Harple, and if any others want to chime in. I think she kind of spoke to that, but I think that's very important.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And since Representative Harple, and then the others will have an option to chime in. Thanks.
So yeah, I agree with you that our children do best, especially at the younger ages, the closer to home that they're located, and then kind of expanding their horizons past that. And I think a lot of education theory would agree with that. If the question is, how do we make sure that we always get to keep our small schools open? Unfortunately, the answer is that we might have to continue to pay more with rising costs. Like everything, education is expensive, and it is rising. But if that's something that we want to invest in and that we agree is really important, then we might need to change our funding formulas. Another thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to change the way that we pay for health care. That is a huge cost driver. We can't just say, let's pay teachers less health care, though. We're in the middle of a teaching crisis, and teaching is really, really hard. And if those benefits are no longer sort of at a competitive professional wage, and you're not going to have the teachers to keep the schools open. So it's a lot more complicated than just let's make them pay more for their health care. It's really looking at health care as a whole, which is a national conversation, and how we can pay for that. So I would say that what you need to do is wait for those, not wait, but like actively encourage those conversations to happen. And B, you should be using your voice to say how much we want to keep our small schools open. I do feel from the Education Committee that message is lost a little bit in the density of urban people that have a voice there versus those of us who are coming from these small towns and we're educated in these small towns. So I would say let's be really vocal about that. And also let's think about what a win would look like, because we are going to have to sacrifice some things. We are going to have less districts than the 119, and there are changes that are going to have to happen on the horizon. We can't save money if we make no changes. So what are sort of the things that are most important to us? Is it that kids spend less time on the bus? Is it that we maintain these small schools? Is it that we set a class size minimum that works for the Northeast Kingdom? And so I would encourage everyone to actually come to this public town hall, because that is a really good place to have those discussions as well. That would be my answer.
Thank you. Senator Ingalls.
$2.4 billion we spent on education, and that number doesn't scare me at all. I do not believe that the solution to a better education is to spend less money, but we need better results. We are spending more and more dollars, and we are having results that are middle of the pack and falling. That just can't be. But the real issue is that it's runaway costs. We're going to spend, as Mark Higley had said, we're going to spend $77 million this year to buy down the education tax. just to buy it down so your property taxes don't go up. $77 million just to spend monies so that your taxes don't go up. We can't have that. We have to be able to have a system that has a 2 to 3% increase every year, and that we know what it is and we know how it is. But I'm going to tell you two things. I'll spend whatever dollars it is as long as we have the results. And the other is I do not want the teachers getting pounded on for the following results. Our hands are tied. So we have better ways to do it. We need to look at it. This is the first chance that we have to transform our education system since we started to close down one-room schoolhouses. We need to make sure when you're in a small rural district, a poor small rural district, that the people in Canaan have the same education choices and the same chances in the world as people in Chittenden County. And that's what we're fighting for. Thank you.
Representative Higley.
Of course, all my towns are small towns, and I certainly am concerned about consolidating schools, but when the reality strikes, Lowell School, for instance, was built, we added on years back for 125, 130 students. There's currently 74 students. J. Westfield Combined School, 59 students total for 2 towns. These are some of the realities and some of the cost drivers. And you know what the proposal is trying to do is modernize Vermont schools to provide a high-quality education while controlling costs. Again, that's something we're going to have to keep our eye on, and the folks that get involved in the school board, the regional school board, there's another process for reaching out to the regional school boards, but to make sure that that's the case. Again, economy of scale, some of this foundation formula money has been talked about as far as maybe giving some of these rural schools more opportunities for our students, and I think that would be good. The transportation is an issue, but again, currently, the folks in J. Westfield go to Derby for their middle school. So there's a lot there. I think we have to move forward because we can't continue down the road with, being the highest per pupil spending and with the outcomes that are not good when you're talking, 40% proficiency in reading and math and things like that. So we just we can't continue to kick this can down the road. I know that the information that we've heard from School Boards Association, Principals Association, Superintendents Association, you name it, they come in and they don't want to have any of this. But I think we have to be strong and move forward and work hard to make sure that it's the best possible plan on both ends, that our student outcomes are going to improve and our costs are going to at least be maintained somewhat reasonable. The foundation formula does have a inflator, kind of like whether it's a consumer price index increase or whatever every year. So it's not going to remain stagnant. But again, there's a lot here, and I'm afraid it has to happen.
Thank you, Representative Higley. And we have a very good, wow, yeah, there you go, sorry. Get it. I am not sure if we're going to be able to get to all the questions, but we're going to do our best, and I'm just giving everyone a heads up. So we're going to open up the floor to the next question. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paige Hartzell. I live in Craftsbury. This is a question that's addressed to all of the legislators, and it is in regards to the veto for the spending bill that would end the hotel motel voucher program. And my question is, what is the plan? And if the plan involves the $2.1 million that would go to municipalities, how is the legislature going to ensure that our smallest municipalities have the administrative support to actually house people? The housing crisis is now entered a state of emergency. Thank you.
Senator Ingalls.
The plan is to, we have shelter set up where people can be actually not monitored is not the word, helped. As it is right now, we've had 150 deaths in the hotel motel programs. They're unmonitored. We're not even allowed to go in and ask them questions. We're not even allowed to go in and ask them, why are you homeless? We're not allowed to go in and help them in any way. We're just not allowed. We're not allowed to go in there. We're not allowed to provide any services. We're not allowed to do anything with them. We're not talking about even cutting one dime of housing people. We're just talking about where we're going to put the monies. And that is to put them into the shelter programs to help to find out, why are you homeless? Why are you there? What's going on? What's going on in your life? How can we help you better? What other services can we provide? Because as it is right now, it's never going to end. Homelessness is never going to end in the hotel motel program. We spent $700 million. $700 million. We're still getting 25 deaths a year from overdoses. We're not allowed to go in there and do anything with them. We have 0 overdoses in the shelter program, 0, and we're helping people. That's the plan.
Representative Higley.
No, I'm good. I think I agree with what Senator Ingalls had talked about.
So, ditto. Representative Harple.
Hi, yeah, the veto does concern me, and I would agree with Russ and, you know, a lot of people that motel program is not ideal. And that we need a plan B, you know, shelter program. But I am concerned because as of right now, on April 1st, 161 kids are actually going to be exited from that motel program, and in the coming weeks, an additional 300. And that is really troubling, especially when we know that in April and even May it is really cold out there, and we don't necessarily have a place for all of those people to go. Right now, I was actually on a phone call last night. I don't know, I can't say for sure what the plan is going to be, but I know that top Democrat leadership is going to be meeting with the governor this week to try and come up with a compromise that will hopefully fund the BAA so that we don't have to wait. What that plan is, I hope to know more in the coming days, but we recognize, yes, that we need to do something in the coming weeks before the April 1st deadline. That's all I have to say about that.
And the next question, please, and thank you, Rep. Harple.
Hi, everybody. Penny Thomas, Newport. I wanted to follow up on the children and the families who are going to be exited from these motels. We're talking about, I think, 2 weeks, and I would like to know specifically what the plan is going to be, and because you know, people are going to be out on the street, and I would also like to know how you voted on the bill that was not, vetoed, or will be vetoed. Thank you.
Senator Ingalls.
I voted no, and I'll vote no again if it doesn't come around. And I think we talked about the plan. We have enough capacity in shelters to get them out of the hotel motel program and to provide services and do a better job. We got to get these kids out of this drug epidemic fueled area. You go into any where these hotel motel programs are, it's not a beautiful thing at all. It's a hellhole, to be honest with you. Everywhere that they're at, the communities are trying to shut them down. If anybody wants to believe that, go up to the border motel. Just sit up there for a minute and see what goes on up there. I think you would probably agree. But we have enough capacity in the shelter programs to house those kids. That's the plan.
Representative Higley. Thank you.
I voted no as well on the Budget Adjustment Act. It's important to understand. I'll read some of the words of what the governor did say in vetoing the Budget Adjustment Act. Expanding the free hotel motel program moves us backwards, reversing important progress made, and this is a key, important progress made towards reforming this failed program agreed upon by the administration and the legislature just last year. After nearly 5 years of experience, we know this approach is far too expensive and fails our constituents, communities, and taxpayers. Again, this is something that is got to end, and it needs to be worked out, but they have had the opportunity to do it.
Representative Harple.
Hi, I voted yes on the BAA, and here are the reasons that I did that. The plan that the governor was proposing as a substitute was to pay $2.1 million to local municipalities to take over, and those local municipalities let us know through VLTC, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, that they were not ready in 2 weeks to take over those shelters. So I would disagree that we have the capacity right now. The other reason, and so that was the 2.1 as opposed to our 1.8 million that we were proposing. The other reasons that I voted yes for it is because this BAA was really not just about the motel program. What we also lost by voting down the BAA, or by having the BAA vetoed, was $1.8 million towards flood relief, $10.4 million towards affordable housing, $31 million for emergency fiscal relief for healthcare providers, and $11 million to other institutions, including the Vermont Veterans Home. So by not passing the BAA, we also have lost all of those right now. And so for those reasons, I voted yes.
Thank you. Now, open it up for the next question. Thank you.
Thanks. My name's Peggy Stevens, and I just want to know from you legislators, have you been to Shaw's lately? Have you been to the gas pumps up at the gas station up by the interstate? Have you noticed that there are no Quebec license plates on this side of the border since at least a month ago? I notice it because this is where I go to shop and buy gas, and I want to know what the legislature's plan is to protect Vermonters from the intended and unintended consequences of these draconian cuts that are happening in the federal government right now.
Thank you for your question. We'll begin with Senator Ingalls.
One of the things, the only time I like to go shopping, and I have my routine, I did it last night. I go in, I have a route, I go in. I am very, very thankful prices are coming down, and they really are. Prices are coming down on the grocery stores, prices are coming down on the gas pumps. Everything's coming down. Inflation was $2.4%, and the last inflation was 5.8%. So things are coming down. As far as what we can do, as far as on the national level, there's not much we can do. Is Trump a shaker-upper of things? No question about it. But things are going to be okay. They're a lot better than what they have been, and
Please let them talk.
Yep.
And keep your
so
questions at the end.
opinions for you guys. But you know, I'm very, very comfortable where it is right now, and very, very comfortable. Go through the grocery stores. Eggs aren't $9 a carton anymore. They were $3.64 right at Walmart yesterday. Yeah, it's going to be okay. I promise.
Representative Higley.
I certainly haven't spent a lot of time in my role as a legislator on what's going to happen at the federal level. Don't know yet. I think I agree with the governor when he's stepping back, basically saying, when we know for sure what's happening from monies, revenues from a particular agency or whatever, then we'll deal with it. Again, this is part of his words when he vetoed the budget adjustment, given growing uncertainty around federal funding and the potential for significant funding cuts to critical programs, spending additional general funds dollars in the budget adjustment for expenses that are not time sensitive is irresponsible. These new spending proposals should be considered as part of the fiscal year 2026 budget and be weighed against other initiatives that may have been reduced due to the federal budget cuts. Again, in my years down there, the budget adjustment was always a true-up for last year's budget. But more recently, a lot of times new positions and new policies have been included in that. And that's not what the budget adjustment is for. So again, in reading what the governor says, I certainly support his efforts to keep track of what is happening. And when we find out for sure what our actual cuts are going to be, we're going to have to deal with them then. But we can't continue to go down the road that we have in the past years and just spend when there are probably going to be some federal cuts that are going to affect us.
Representative Harple.
I unfortunately do not share the optimism that things are going to be okay soon. I think that we are in a crisis. We're in a constitutional crisis right now. I have been spending so much time on education, and that's really my sort of purview, that I can't say for sure, like, what all of the Ways and Means and other financial branches are doing. But what I can tell you is that we are trying to shore up programs to help people right now and anticipate sort of where there might be some holes based on federal cuts. One of the programs that I would really support, that I think that we've done a good job communicating our support for, is the Universal Meals Program. Earlier this year, it had the potential to be cut, and I believe that is not going to happen now, and I think that's really important. Because I think that we're gonna maybe have some families that need that extra help with food, and we're gonna provide 2 meals a day to kids at school, to all kids. So things like that. I know that at the executive branch, they are tracking the tariffs and the potential impacts of what those federal cuts are. I don't know yet what their solutions to that information is gonna be, but I know that there are people behind the scenes trying to figure that out. I think as a community in Vermont, we need to remember that we're Vermonters and that we're all going to need to help each other out, and we're going to need to proceed with sort of some generosity of heart right now, because people are going to need help, and that's what we as Vermont neighbors do. So that's my best advice for right now.
Next question. Thank you, Rep. Harple.
I'm Beth Meacham from Greensboro. We are potentially losing our elementary school. We have a large homeschool base, and we have preschoolers who will be moving up the ranks. My question is, in all of these discussions around education, is there discussion about the trickle-down? If consolidation leads to larger classrooms, it is going to lead to more families potentially choosing to homeschool. And that has an economic impact in that one parent, what are we going to, so is the education department in their discussions looking at that trickle down of a household being a one-wage earner so that one parent can educate?
Thank you for the question. Senator Ingalls.
I don't have a lot to add to that, but because you stood so long in line, I would say this. We're trying to cut costs. We're trying to do it in a reasonable and smart way. We're not trying to destroy communities. We're trying to make it so that all communities are whole. And I know of one thing as far as some of my far-reaching areas, and even places like Greensboro, where you don't think they're far-reaching areas, but if you get into situations where you're going to lose your schools and the kids are going to have to travel, especially little 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, and they're maybe 2 hours a day on the bus, you have to be mindful of all that. But I don't really have a specific answer for you, other than the fact that those are the types of situations that, if we're going to reimagine education, that we want to help solve versus to exacerbate the problems. I don't know that homeschooling has been. I know it's gone up. I know the people that I talked with homeschooling are a little bit more optimistic, because the reason why they're homeschooling is because they didn't really like what was going on in the public education system. So hold on, let's wait, let's see it, let's see what comes out, and with what you've said is in the forefront of my mind. Thank you.
Representative Higley.
I guess I already talked a little bit about the realities of our small schools and what may have to happen. I agree with Senator Ingalls that the folks that I talk to, that more and more are homeschooling. They're actually looking for some benefits. There's a couple of bills out there. I don't know if they'll gain any traction, but giving them a $1,000 tax credit for folks that homeschool. There's also a provision to look at receiving driver's education as well for homeschools. School choice is a big issue for me and a lot of my constituents. I think it should be expanded. I don't believe it will be in this bill, but at least there's still going to be school choice to some degree within districts. I think that's good. I've certainly taken advantage of that with my kids. I've actually also, the decision we've made as a family, at one point, paid tuition to St. Paul's School for one of our daughters at a point where we thought that was best. Again, as long as, from what the Secretary of Education said, as long as there's availability in the schools in the district, you should be able to have the choice.
Representative Harple.
On the Education Committee, we have not talked specifically about the effect of smaller or larger classroom sizes on homeschooling, but that's a fair question, and I could look into sort of what those trends are. I am not sure that I am so convinced, especially sort of in the future economy, that we are going to have a massive exit from public schools to homeschool, because I think that takes a lot of privilege to be able to homeschool. Most families are going to need two people working, and they also, I don't think every parent really wants to be in charge of their kids' entire education when we have these professional licensed teachers to do it. I couldn't teach my kid math, I can tell you that. So, I mean, we will see what happens, but I think that one of the things that we're also trying to do with this bill, and Representative Higley spoke this a little bit, is kind of standardize education quality standards across the state so that we can actually make schools better. So I'm excited about some of the potential of this bill in the Northeast Kingdom to really offer our kids some things I think that homeschoolers could be excited about, and we're looking at more opportunities to get them into schools for partial programming. So hopefully there will be some solutions there.
Thank you, Representative Harple. Next question, please.
I know we're short on time. Joanna Burgess from Westmore. Last week, and I know my voice is shaking because I don't like to talk publicly, even though I'm a teacher, DOJ cut $660 million from a program that funds, it's called Local for Schools. These food hubs provide 85,000 children with meals in Vermont. So my question is, what's going to be done? Because it will also take $1.2 million out of the pockets of local farmers.
Thank you for your question. Thank you. Representative Ingalls.
So I chair the Ag Committee. We've had no cuts, none whatsoever, as far as to any programs, as far as food security, anything. We haven't had any cuts in our meals in schools, none whatsoever. We're still doing 100% meals in schools. We've had absolutely positively no cuts, no tariffs have affected the ag industry as far as in the state of Vermont. There are some uncertainties, but I know that there's a lot of talk about this or that, but we've had absolutely positively no cuts to anything that supplies any farm to table. No cuts whatsoever as far as anything that's come forward to us. None whatsoever. In fact, we're looking at Working Lands Group actually adding more money to them. So we've had absolutely positively the monies that come before my committee, which is a lot of food stuff, we've had zero cuts. Absolutely positively zero cuts. We've had zero cuts to the school systems as far as feeding kids. Zero. So I know there's a lot of stuff out there, and I would say a lot of misinformation, but yeah, Trump is a disruptor, no question about it, and there's a lot of stuff that gets out there. But as far as right now, no tariffs, no cuts, no nothing as far as anything in the state of Vermont so far. But when I want to get back to the BAA, two things. $20 million the governor wanted to stay in the BAA and not be spent. That is to counteract any cuts that come at the federal level. Everybody else wants to spend that. The other thing is Rep. Harple was correct, $11.4 million, I think, to go to Vermont Housing Conservation Board. They don't want the money. They can't spend it. They said, no, don't give us the money. We've got $54 million. We don't know how we're going to spend that. No, we don't need $11.4 billion. Please put it someplace else, maybe next year. So anyways, I know there's a lot of things. We're cutting this, we're cutting that, we're cutting this, we're cutting that. As far as the Ag Committee, 0 cuts. As far as programs to kids in school, as far as feeding them, 0 cuts. And that's the way it is. Thank you.
Representative Higley.
Well, again, real quick, I've heard that on the federal level. I'm not sure about that. To go further with some of what Senator Ingalls said, you know, some of the projections in what we're spending, like that $77 million in general fund that the governor's looking to draw down our education, our property taxes. There's been talk in our committee about maybe only using half of that and spending the rest, or maybe. I don't know, there's so much discussion around down there, but again, we really need to be careful with what is coming down from the federal level and whether or not we're going to have the money to help out and not make it so unaffordable for Vermonters.
Representative Harple.
I don't have much to add. I mean, I am worried about that too. You know, we're going to continue to try and fund the Universal Meals Program. We're funding Vermont Farm to School programs. I sat in on a joint meeting last week about how those cuts were going to be affecting us. I would have to review those notes, but I believe that one of the things they said, particularly about the food program, maybe Representative Higley knows this, is that it was going to actually affect more like the people that manage the paperwork behind that program than it would affect the program for the food themselves. So that might be where we see a hiccup. Do you remember them saying that? That it would affect more like the people doing the paperwork for the food program than the food program itself. Yeah. So that's where we might see sort of some pauses. So I don't know the answer. We're going to have to wait and see.
Thank you, and we have time for one question. We do have to keep this one kind of brief, but thank you. Come on up.
This will be very brief. I want to make a couple sentences first before I ask my question. My sentences are, if you're concerned about getting more information about the school issue so you get both sides of the coin, I suggest you join Rural School Community Alliance, RSCA. My question is, plus I'm a little nervous that we're trying to imitate Chittenden schools. We have a lot of benefits that they can never get. But my question is, where do you all stand on H54, the cell phones? H54. Oh, Jerry Kale from Barton. And I'm sure you support that.
Thanks. Senator Ingalls.
I do support that. And I support it because the schools support it. Unfortunately, we have it and it's ready to be passed, but it's held up in a committee. They won't pass it out. And it's not our committee. We want it passed. We absolutely positively passed. Jenny Lyons on health and Sam Douglas is on that committee. H54 cell phone bill to restrict cell phones in schools. And is something that we've worked really, really hard on. We're ready to, I don't think it's going to get passed. I really, really don't. So if you like that, Health and Human Services, Jenny Lyons, put some pressure to her because that's what we need to have happen. But I do support that bill because public education supports it. So that's why I'm there.
Representative Higley.
Thank you. There was a bill in the Senate and the House, and I did sign on to the House bill, so I support that.
Representative Harple.
H54 is on the wall of the Education Committee room right now. I asked about it the other day. The new district proposal, I don't know how to express this enough, has been taking up all of our time. It has led to us being able to talk and pass about almost nothing else. We did hear some testimony on that. And so I asked, are we ever going to get a chance in committee to vote on that bill? Because I'm a huge supporter too. As a teacher, I spend so much time talking to kids about cell phones. I would love to never have another conversation with a kid about a cell phone. And so if this was passed at a state level, I think that takes the burden off our teachers. They can focus more on their teaching and their relationships. And the mental health aspects of this, I cannot stress enough. Yes, kids need less screen time. Kids do not need to be looking at their phones all the time, and it is such a distraction to learning. And there's anxiety that goes with it. There's anxiety and bullying. I think this is a no-brainer. It should pass. I'm kind of disappointed to hear Senator Ingalls say it's not going to pass, because that was what I was told in the House. Like, don't worry about it. We might not get to it this semester. We'll get to it next semester. Or, sorry, I guess it's not called semester. I'm a teacher. But it's okay because the Senate's going to throw it into their bill, which will come across our table. And so now I'm hearing, okay, that's not what's going to happen. I'm hopeful that by the second half of the biennium that it will pass. So the second semester. It'll pass next semester. Hopefully. Yeah. Right. But only because that crossover date in the House is already happening. We're not going to send it through, and it sounds like Senate's not going to send it our way. But I'm still hopeful that it will. I believe it will eventually pass.
Thank you. So at this point, I'd like to thank the representatives all for attending today. I'd like to thank all of you for coming here and all of your excellent questions. I'd also again like to thank Fred's Energy and Dennis Percy. And as always, the Eastside, the members from the media, NEKLS, and thank you all for a wonderful. Oh, the next legislative breakfast will be April 7th. Same spot, same time, sponsored by the Orleans County Board of Realtors, and I hope to see you all then. Thank you all.